Later that evening, Isla stepped out onto the balcony to cool off. The Lagos night air kissed her bare back, and the sounds of the ocean whispered below. She leaned on the glass railing, sipping from a flute of chilled rose and letting the moonlight wash over her. "Thought I'd find you here," Landon said gently. She didn't turn. "You always like balconies," he added, moving to stand beside her. "Even when we were 12, said you liked the feeling of being between the ground and the sky. You remember that?" "I remember everything." She finally looked at him. He was close, closer than comfort allowed, but she didn't step away. "Landon," she said, voice barely audible, "what are we doing? Talking?" "No, I mean this. Us. Reconnecting like 17 years didn't just vanish. You're acting like we paused a movie and now we're pressing play again." He studied her, eyes soft. "What if that's exactly what I'm doing?" Isla stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed. "You don't get to just walk back into my life and make declarations." He didn't move. "And you don't get to pretend like you don't feel it too." She went still. "Feel what?" she asked. Landon stepped closer. "That pull, that thing between us, it didn't die, it just waited." Her breath caught. "This isn't some nostalgic reunion for me, Isla. I've thought about you, dreamed about you, for years. You're not just a memory to me. You're the one that never went away." She shook her head slowly. "You're making this hard." "I'm not trying to make it hard," he said, voice low. "I'm trying to make it real." She turned away again, but he touched her hand, and something in her unraveled. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "I'm not the girl you used to know. I've changed." "Good," he replied. "So have I." Their eyes met again, and this time, neither of them looked away. After dinner, they walked along the marina boardwalk, the lights casting a soft glow over the water. Isla's heels clicked gently on the wooden path as Landon walked beside her in silence. Not pushing, just present. Finally, she stopped. "I keep thinking, what if I'm wrong about you?" she said, turning to face him. "Then let me prove you're not." He stepped closer. "Let me in, Isla." She looked up at him, heart racing. The boy she used to know had turned into a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and that terrified her. But more than that, it thrilled her. And when he leaned in to kiss her, soft, slow, careful, she didn't pull away. The sound of waves lapping gently against the dock was the only thing filling the early morning silence. Banana Island was waking up slowly, the sky blushing with the promise of another bright Lagos day. Isla Monroe rolled her suitcase over the polished marble floors of her aunt's penthouse foyer, breathing in the scent of jasmine and ocean air. It had been years since she'd stepped foot in this place, but the view from the glass windows hadn't changed. Endless water, wealth, and wonder. She had returned. 17 years. That's how long it had been since she last saw Landon Steele. They had been best friends once, thick as thieves. As children in Victoria Island, they'd shared everything. Christmases, beach trips, secrets whispered in the dark. He was her safe place, and she was his favorite person. Then life happened. Boarding school for her, London business school for him. Her parents divorced, his father died. They tried to stay in touch, but the years stretched wider than either of them could bridge, and now they were strangers again. Or maybe not quite. Isla wasn't here by coincidence. Her Aunt Marion had organized an exclusive fundraising gala at the Banana Island Yacht Club, and somehow Landon's name had been listed on the VIP guest list. She wasn't sure if that was intentional, but it didn't matter. Part of her wanted to see him. The other part didn't want to feel again. At 35, Isla had done well for herself. Founder of Monroe Luxe, a booming fashion consultancy firm with branches in London and Lagos. She had money, power, and independence. But the more her net worth grew, the lonelier she became. Every man she dated either wanted her success, her image, or her bank account. No one ever wanted Isla for Isla. She padded into the open concept kitchen, poured herself a glass of fresh orange juice, and opened her phone. No messages. No welcome back to Lagos text from any of the people she used to know. Except for one, from Aunt Marion. Landon will be there tonight. Don't freak out. Wear that emerald dress. Isla groaned, her head dropping onto the cool countertop. Trust her aunt to stir drama like tea. Across town, Landon Steele adjusted his cufflinks in front of the mirror in his penthouse suite at the signature Ikoyi. The dark green silk shirt hugged his frame just right, a perfect contrast to his midnight black tuxedo. His beard was neatly trimmed, jawline sharp as ever, eyes calm but focused. He looked the part. Lagos's most eligible bachelor, billionaire investor, CEO of Steele Group Holdings. But inside, he was pacing. He had heard she was coming back. Isla Monroe, the girl who once knew him better than anyone. The girl he thought about every time his life slowed down for even a second. He never said it out loud, not even to himself, but losing touch with Isla had been the one regret that never faded. The first 5 years, he had excuses. School, work, life. The next 10, cowardice. He thought maybe she changed. Maybe she'd forgotten. But 2 weeks ago, her name had appeared in a magazine profile about African female billionaires under 40. And the moment he saw her photo, bold brows, fierce eyes, and that signature Mona Lisa smile, he knew. He had never really moved on. Tonight, he'd see her again. He didn't know what he'd say, but he would not let 17 years pass without trying again. The gala at Banana Island Yacht Club was bathed in gold light and soft piano music. Ornate lanterns hung from the chandeliers, reflecting off glasses of champagne and the shimmer of designer gowns. Lagos elite mingled under velvet canopies, laughter blending with soft jazz. Isla stepped in wearing the emerald silk gown her aunt insisted on, backless, form-fitting, elegant. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she made her entrance. She smiled at the murmurs of admiration, but her heart was thudding. She spotted Marion across the room, chatting with a group of older diplomats. But it wasn't her aunt who made her freeze. It was him, Landon Steele. He stood near the open balcony, surrounded by 2 men and a younger woman Isla vaguely recognized from business headlines. But Landon wasn't paying attention to any of them. He was watching Isla. Their eyes locked like magnets. Isla felt her breath catch. He looked incredible. Time had sculpted him into something mythic. Broad shoulders, piercing eyes, and a confidence that didn't need to prove itself. And he was walking toward her. She panicked and turned toward the bar, ordering a glass of Prosecco just to keep her hands busy. Still nervous around large crowds? A voice said behind her. She turned slowly, the glass halfway to her lips. Landon. She blinked. Wow, you look older, he teased, flashing that same smile she remembered from childhood. She laughed despite herself. No, not older, just different, bigger, confident. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You look exactly like I imagined you would. Still got that Mona Lisa smile. The air between them thickened. I can't believe we're standing in the same room, Isla said quietly. I can, Landon replied. I've been waiting for this. She looked away, unsure what to say. I know we lost touch, he added, softer now. But if there's any chance we could pick up even a piece of what we had, I'm not letting you go again, Isla. She stared at him. We were just kids. Landon's voice dropped even lower. Yeah, and even then, I loved you. The rest of the gala blurred around them, waiters weaving through candlelit tables, couples swaying to soft saxophone music, flashes from paparazzi cameras popping by the garden entrance. But Isla barely noticed. All she could think about was the way Landon had looked at her. Not like an old friend. Not like someone revisiting a memory. He had looked at her like a man seeing something he'd been waiting for his entire life. After their brief conversation, Isla had retreated to a cocktail table near the windows, needing space to breathe. Her heart was doing laps in her chest, and it had nothing to do with the champagne. She wasn't some teenage girl with a crush. She was a full-grown woman, in heels worth 5 figures, in a business that employed over 50 people. Yet Landon Steele's voice, deep, smooth, laced with old memories, had unraveled her in seconds. "Why are you hiding over here like Cinderella before midnight?" came a voice beside her. Aunt Marion, regal in a wine-colored ASO. OK wrap dress paired with gold stilettos, slid into the empty seat beside her. I'm not hiding," Isla said, swirling her drink. "I'm observing." Marion gave her that knowing anti-stare. "He hasn't taken his eyes off you." Isla didn't even have to look to know Landon was still watching. "He said something tonight that threw me off." "Oh?" "He said he loved me, back when we were kids." Marion sipped her red wine and smirked. "You say that like it's news. Sweetheart, everyone knew. That boy used to follow you around like you invented oxygen." "I was 13, Isla whispered. "I didn't know what love was. Neither did he." Marion placed a hand over Isla's. "He knows now. Question is, do you want to know too?" Isla exhaled and glanced across the room. Landon was now talking with the Minister of Energy, but even then his eyes still flicked in her direction every few seconds. He hadn't changed in the way that mattered. And that was dangerous. Later that evening, Isla stepped out onto the balcony to cool off. The Lagos night air kissed her bare back, and the sounds of the ocean whispered below. She leaned on the glass railing, sipping from a flute of chilled rose and letting the moonlight wash over her. "Thought I'd find you here," Landon said gently. She didn't turn. "You always like balconies," he added, moving to stand beside her. "Even when we were 12, said you liked the feeling of being between the ground and the sky. You remember that?" "I remember everything." She finally looked at him. He was close, closer than comfort allowed, but she didn't step away. "Landon," she said, voice barely audible. "What are we doing?" "Talking." "No, I mean this. Us. Reconnecting like 17 years didn't just vanish. You're acting like we paused a movie and now we're pressing play again." He studied her, eyes soft. "What if that's exactly what I'm doing?" Isla stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed. "You don't get to just walk back into my life and make declarations." He didn't move. "And you don't get to pretend like you don't feel it too." She went still. "Feel what?" she asked. Landon stepped closer. "That pull, that thing between us, it didn't die, it just waited." Her breath caught. "This isn't some nostalgic reunion for me, Isla. I've thought about you, dreamed about you, for years. You're not just a memory to me. You're the one that never went away." She shook her head slowly. "You're making this hard." "I'm not trying to make it hard," he said, voice low. "I'm trying to make it real." She turned away again, but he touched her hand, and something in her unraveled. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "I'm not the girl you used to know. I've changed." "Good," he replied. "So have I." Their eyes met again, and this time, neither of them looked away. They left the gala separately, but the electricity crackled between them until the very end. Landon didn't press. Isla didn't invite, but something had been lit, and neither of them could put it out. 2 days later, Isla found herself sitting at an outdoor cafe in Ikoyi, watching raindrops slide down her coffee cup. She hadn't planned to meet Landon again. She had told herself she was too busy, too distracted, too emotionally unprepared. But when he texted, "One coffee, you owe me that after 17 years, she didn't say no. He arrived a few minutes later, in a white linen shirt and navy slacks, looking like he'd stepped off the pages of a GQ Nigeria feature. He pulled out a chair and smiled. "You came. You don't let people say no, do you? Only when it matters." They talked for hours. About the businesses they built, about the people they lost, about their mistakes. And at the end of it, when the rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds, Isla realized something terrifying. She didn't feel like she was catching up with a stranger. She felt like she had come home. That night, as she stood in her hotel suite overlooking the lagoon, her phone buzzed. Landon. Still thinking about that green dress. She stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Isla, still thinking about that look in your eyes. Landon, would it scare you if I said I don't want to waste time? Isla's heart pounded. Isla, yes, but not enough to stop me. The next morning, Isla Monroe stood on the balcony of her aunt's Banana Island penthouse, sipping fresh pineapple juice as the breeze danced through her silk robe. The sun had barely broken past the clouds, casting a honey-gold filter across the lagoon and rooftops of Lagos's wealthiest district. The silence was comforting, broken only by the soft buzz of her phone. It was Landon. Brunch, one of the best spots in 6. I promise. No intense declarations this time, just mimosas and memories. She smiled despite herself. Where? Orchid House, 11 a.m. Dress like you didn't come to impress me. She laughed aloud. I always dress like that. See you soon. Orchid House Cafe was tucked into a discreet corner of Victoria Island, shielded by tall trees and velvet ropes. The staff knew better than to post celebrity guest arrivals online, and the garden seating was enclosed in privacy hedges. It was a sanctuary for Lagos's elite, somewhere you could sip mimosa without dodging cameras. Isla arrived at 10:59 a.m., dressed in an elegant ivory jumpsuit with soft curls framing her face and nude stilettos clicking softly against the polished tiles. She stepped into the garden lounge and immediately saw him. Landon Steele was already waiting. A crisp short-sleeved shirt hugged his frame, and his dark slacks blended with the chic rattan furniture. He stood up when he saw her, lips tugging into that familiar half-smile that used to mean trouble back in the day. You came, he said, pulling her chair out like a gentleman. You bribed me with mimosas. He grinned. Whatever works. They ordered avocado toast, scrambled eggs, and fresh fruit. 2 glasses of mimosa appeared moments later, just enough fizz to set the tone. For a while, they talked like friends. Isla told him about her fashion consultancy and the madness of running branches in Lagos and London. Landon shared stories about negotiating billionaire deals and dealing with corporate sharks. But it wasn't the business talk that made Isla's heart flutter. It was the way he listened. Not like a man trying to impress her, but like someone who remembered the shy girl who once stitched her own prom dress and hid poetry under her bed. You still sketch? He asked gently. She blinked. What? Your sketches. You used to doodle designs in the margins of your notebooks. You'd never let me look. Her heart tugged. I forgot you remembered that. I remember everything, he said, even that you liked your agusi thick and your suya extra spicy. She smiled and looked down at her mimosa. You make it hard to keep walls up. Good, because I came to tear them down. Their eyes held, and Isla felt that invisible string again, the one that tied her present self to her 13-year-old self, the one who always looked for Landon in every room. After brunch, they walked through the nearby sculpture garden, shoes crunching softly against the pebbled path. The conversation flowed easily now, filled with banter, sarcasm, and unspoken tension. You know what I remember? She asked, nudging him lightly. What? The time you jumped into the lagoon because I dared you to, and then almost drowned because you forgot you couldn't swim. Landon laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. I was 13, trying to impress a girl. Well, you failed miserably. I had to scream for help. He chuckled. Still worth it. They stopped by a koi pond, the sunlight playing off the rippling water. Isla leaned against the railing, watching the fish. You know, I used to wonder what it would be like, she said. What would be like? Seeing you again, after all these years. He tilted his head. And? I thought maybe we'd be awkward, or different. But this, it feels familiar, easy, a little too easy. Landon stepped closer. Familiar doesn't mean weak, Isla. Sometimes it means right. She bit her lip. You say all the right things, like you've practiced. I have, he admitted, for 17 years. She turned to him, lips parted. Why now, Landon? Because I'm done wondering what we could have been, he said. I don't want to die with what if tattooed on my soul. The wind stirred her curls. Her heart thudded in her chest. I'm not ready, she whispered. I'm not asking for all of you, he said. Just dinner tomorrow night. Let me show you who I am now. She nodded slowly. Okay. That night, Isla lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above her. Every part of her felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. Landon wasn't playing a game. He remembered the way her hand trembled when she was nervous. He remembered that she hated loud spaces but loved street food. He remembered her, and she couldn't deny it anymore. The girl he once knew had been quietly waiting inside her for the man he had become. The evening sun dipped low over Banana Island, staining the sky in hues of fire and silk. Isla Monroe stood at her bedroom mirror, fastening a delicate gold necklace above the neckline of her off-shoulder navy blue dress. She looked elegant, composed, but her insides told another story entirely. This was not just dinner. This was her crossing a line she'd spent years guarding. The knock on the door was soft. Then came Aunt Marion's voice. He's downstairs, in a navy tux, holding flowers like it's prom night. Isla gave a nervous laugh. Thanks. Marion stepped in, smiling knowingly. You're glowing, darling. It's the highlighter, Isla deadpanned. No, it's him, her aunt said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. You like him. I always did, Isla admitted quietly. That's the problem. Marion kissed her cheek. Then don't run this time. Landon Steele was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, looking devastatingly handsome, in a tailored tuxedo with a deep satin lapel. In his hand was a single white lily, her favorite. He had remembered again. You clean up well, she said as she descended the staircase. So do you, he replied, eyes drinking her in with a quiet reverence. She accepted the flower with a small smile. You always knew how to disarm me. He offered his arm. Shall we? Dinner was at Luce, a rooftop Italian restaurant overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. The skyline twinkled with the city's pulse as live violinists played soft music beneath crystal chandeliers. Their table was secluded, the perfect combination of elegance and intimacy. They ordered grilled sea bass, creamy risotto, and 2 glasses of aged red wine. The conversation started easy. Travel, work, funny childhood memories, but eventually it slipped into deeper waters. So, Landon said, setting down his fork, tell me something you don't tell most people. Isla sipped her wine, thinking. Sometimes, she said slowly, I wish I wasn't wealthy. He blinked, surprised. Really? She nodded. It complicates everything. Every man I've dated in the last 10 years looked at my balance sheet before they saw me. I'm always a prize, a name to elevate their ambition. I've stopped trusting. I've stopped believing someone could love me without agenda. Landon's expression softened. Is that why you haven't married? I tried once, she said quietly. He proposed after 6 months. I found out a week later he was negotiating a partnership deal with my company's board. I walked away the same night. Good, Landon said firmly, because you deserve better. She met his gaze. You scare me. He leaned in slightly. Why? Because you don't need anything from me. You're not trying to use me. You're just here, and I don't know what to do with that. Landon exhaled. Isla, I'm not here because of what you have. I'm here because of what we had, and maybe still do. She stared at him for a long moment. What if we try, and it breaks us? What if we don't, and we miss the best thing we ever had? The music swelled around them as the moment stretched between truth and choice. After dinner, they walked along the marina boardwalk, the lights casting a soft glow over the water. Isla's heels clicked gently on the wooden path as Landon walked beside her in silence. Not pushing, just present. Finally, she stopped. I keep thinking, what if I'm wrong about you? She said, turning to face him. Then let me prove you're not. He stepped closer. Let me in, Isla. She looked up at him, heart racing. The boy she used to know had turned into a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and that terrified her. But more than that, it thrilled her. And when he leaned in to kiss her, soft, slow, careful, she didn't pull away. Later that night, Isla sat curled on her aunt's balcony, sipping warm tea and staring into the dark lagoon. Her lips still tingled. Her heart felt full and light, like a balloon she didn't know how to hold on to. She thought about Landon's kiss, about the way he waited for her to lean in too, about the way he never made her feel owned, just seen. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone wasn't trying to unlock her walls, but understand why they were there in the first place. And that was terrifying, because this was no longer about a childhood friend. This was about something real, and real meant risk. Across the island, Landon stood by the window of his penthouse, staring out into the night. His phone was on the table, untouched. He didn't need a text from her to know she was thinking about him. The kiss had told him everything. She was falling, slowly, carefully, but undeniably. And this time he was going to catch her. The following evening, Isla Monroe found herself standing in front of her wardrobe, second-guessing everything. She had changed 3 times already, first into a silk-wrapped dress, then into a tailored jumpsuit, and now into a soft, blush-toned slip dress that flowed effortlessly with every breath of air. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't trying too hard. It was safe. And she hated that she felt the need to be safe around Landon Steele. "You've never dressed safe a day in your life," Aunt Marion said, appearing in the doorway, wine glass in hand. "Why start now?" Isla sighed. "Because I'm not sure what tonight is." Marion raised an eyebrow. "Is it a date?" "Yes." "Do you like him?" "Yes." "Then wear something that makes you feel like a goddess and stop pretending you're not dying to see him again." Isla turned slowly toward the mirror. Her aunt was right. This wasn't just another evening. This was her opening a door she had slammed shut 17 years ago. And deep down, she wanted to walk through it. Landon arrived in a black SUV, stepping out in a crisp white shirt tucked into fitted dark trousers. No tie, just clean, quiet confidence. He looked like the kind of man who turned heads at boardrooms and weddings alike. But tonight, he only had eyes for one woman. And when he saw her, emerging from the house in a scarlet-wrapped dress, with heels that kissed the driveway, his breath caught. "You look devastating," he said, taking her hand. "You clean up well yourself," Isla replied, cheeks warm. They rode in silence for a few minutes, the tension thick but charged. Landon reached over and brushed her fingers gently. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "Only when I realize this doesn't feel like a game anymore." He smiled. "That's because it's not." Dinner was at Verite, a discreet fine dining restaurant hidden within the private floors of a luxury art gallery in Ikoyi. Each course was crafted like sculpture. Saffron risotto served in porcelain shells, grilled sea bass draped over truffle mash, and crystal-cut wine glasses filled with deep red vintage blends. Soft music and low candlelight made everything feel close. Intimate. Dangerously so. They didn't talk much about work that night. Instead, they traded stories. Some old, some new. "I remember your 12th birthday," Landon said. "You wanted a chocolate fountain, but the caterer brought strawberry." "I cried for 2 hours," Isla groaned. "You brought me a chocolate bar and told me to pretend. I think that was the first time I thought you were brilliant. I thought it was the first time you looked at me like I wasn't just your annoying best friend." She laughed softly, head tilting. "You were never annoying. You were just too good." They stared at each other, the moment stretched tight like a bow. He leaned forward. "You still see me that way?" "I don't know what I see anymore," she admitted, "but I know what I feel." Landon exhaled. "And what's that?" "Terrified, excited, vulnerable." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Same." After dinner, they walked down the spiral staircase of the art gallery, the marble floors echoing beneath them. The entire building had emptied for the night, and it felt like they had the whole place to themselves. They stopped in front of a painting, an abstract blend of gold and midnight blue, depicting 2 bodies just barely touching at the fingertips. Isla studied it, arms folded loosely across her chest. "It's like they're reaching for something," she murmured, "but they're scared it'll vanish if they do." Landon looked at her instead of the painting. Maybe they're scared it'll stay. She turned toward him slowly. Is that what we are? He stepped closer. I don't want to just reach anymore, Isla. I want to hold. Their breaths mingled. Isla looked into his eyes and saw no games, no pretense. Just the boy she once knew and the man he'd become, layered and real. And in that moment, all the walls she had carefully built didn't stand a chance. She nodded once. Come home with me. They didn't speak on the drive back. There was too much electricity crackling in the silence, too many unspoken things dancing in the space between their hands. When they arrived, the staff had long gone for the night. The house was quiet, bathed in soft moonlight through the large windows. Isla turned to him at the door. You can still walk away. I've waited 17 years. I'm not walking anywhere. She stepped inside and he followed. The kiss started like a whisper. Soft, tentative, testing. Then it deepened. Years of emotion and longing colliding into something hot, desperate, and impossibly tender. His hands held her face like she might disappear. Her fingers curled into his shirt, anchoring herself to this moment. They moved through the house, through time, shedding fear and fabric along the way. In her bedroom, he paused. You sure? He asked, breath ragged. Yes, she whispered. Don't make me think tonight. He didn't. That night, their bodies spoke where words had failed. He touched her like he'd studied her skin in dreams. She held him like she'd been waiting for the second chance before she even knew she'd missed it. There were no promises. No labels. Just them. And the electricity of rediscovered love. Sometime after midnight, they lay wrapped in each other. The city outside slept, but neither of them did. Isla stared at the ceiling, chest rising slowly. I didn't plan this, she whispered. Landon brushed her hair back gently. Neither did I. She rolled toward him. What happens now? He held her gaze. Now. We stop pretending this is temporary. 2 weeks passed. 2 perfect, maddening, complicated weeks. Isla Monroe had slipped into a rhythm with Landon that she never expected. Dinners, long phone calls, stolen kisses in the elevator of her building. Yet despite the growing intimacy, she'd been holding something back. A nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. And it wasn't just emotional. It was physical. The morning nausea, the exhaustion, the way her body seemed slightly off-kilter, like her center of gravity was shifting in slow motion. She had chalked it up to stress, to falling too hard, too fast. But deep down, Isla knew something was different. Then came the day she fainted. She was in a design meeting at her Lagos office discussing a new capsule collection launch, when the heat surged to her head and the lights blurred into a spinning mess. She woke up in the arms of her assistant, blinking under the cold air of the boardroom AC. Ma'am, are you okay? Someone had asked. She wasn't. Not at all. That afternoon, Isla sat in a private room at a boutique hospital in Ikoyi, arms crossed as the doctor ran the final scan. She had come alone, her driver waiting discreetly in the lot. She didn't want company. Not yet. When the doctor finally turned from the monitor, her expression was unreadable. Well, Miss Monroe, she began with a gentle smile, you're pregnant, about 7 weeks along. Isla exhaled shakily, not sure if she wanted to laugh or throw up again. There's more, the doctor added. Isla blinked. What do you mean? There are 3 heartbeats. The room went still. 3, Isla echoed, her voice dry. Yes, the doctor confirmed, turning the monitor toward her. Triplets. The world tilted. Isla stared at the screen in numb silence. She had come in expecting the worst. Instead, she was looking at 3 tiny pulsing dots, 3 tiny lives growing inside her. From one night, one impossible night. She barely remembered the drive home. Her driver asked if she was okay twice. She just nodded, her hands clutching the hem of her dress, like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Triplets? She hadn't even told Landon she was late. They hadn't talked about that night since it happened. Things between them were light, flirty, surface level, deep. Neither had dared acknowledge that they'd crossed a line neither could uncross. And now, this. A baby. No, 3 babies would change everything. What would he say? What would he think? Would he walk? No, this was Landon. He wasn't that kind of man. But still, fear wrapped itself around her chest like steel wire. That night, Landon showed up at her place unannounced, holding Thai takeout and flashing his crooked smile. I figured you hadn't eaten. Your assistant said you left the office early. She froze. You called my assistant? She called me first. Said you looked pale. I got worried. Isla opened the door, heart racing. You shouldn't have come. His smile faded. What's wrong? She stood there, caught between confession and collapse. I need to tell you something, she said, finally stepping aside. He entered slowly, setting the food on the kitchen counter. I went to the hospital today, she began. His posture straightened immediately. Are you sick? Isla. I'm not sick. She walked to the living room, turned, and faced him. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. I'm pregnant. Silence. A slow breath left his lungs. Landon stared at her, then moved closer. Okay, I wasn't expecting that, but there's more, she interrupted. He blinked. More? It's triplets. This time he sat. He didn't speak, just stared at the floor, processing. 3. His mind spun with logistics, responsibilities, risks, then circled back to her. How are you feeling? He asked finally. She blinked. You're not going to scream. Ask for a paternity test? Tell me I ruined your life? No. Why not? Because I've known you since we were children, he said, rising to his feet. You're not a liar, and because I was there too, it takes 2, Isla. She pressed her hand to her chest. You're taking this way too well. He moved closer. I'm terrified. My whole life just flipped on his head. But if you think I'm going to disappear now, you don't know me as well as you think you do. Tears broke free then, slipping down her cheeks before she could stop them. Landon stepped forward and wrapped her in his arms. You're not doing this alone. Not now. Not ever. That night, Isla fell asleep wrapped in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady thud of the man who once loved her in silence, and now stood beside her in chaos. The morning sun streamed gently through the blinds Isla's Banana Island bedroom. She blinked awake slowly, her hand instinctively settling over her belly. 3 lives. The thought still sent tremors through her chest. Landon was already up. She could hear the clinking of plates from the kitchen. The smell of brewed coffee wafted in with comforting warmth. For a moment, she just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady her heartbeat. How had they gotten here? One night, one kiss, one moment of surrender. And now 3 heartbeats lived inside her, and Landon was in her kitchen making toast like they were already a family. It terrified her. She finally pushed off the sheets and stepped into the hallway. Landon stood barefoot in dark joggers and a plain black t-shirt, plating scrambled eggs and grilled plantains. His back was turned, but he must have heard her steps. Morning, he said without turning. Hungry? She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely. I didn't know you could cook. He glanced over his shoulder with a grin. Only when it's for someone important. Her throat tightened. He plated the food, grabbed 2 mugs, and joined her at the island. They ate in silence for a few minutes, her stealing glances at him between bites, him acting like the world hadn't just split open. Finally, Isla put her fork down. We need to talk about this. Landon looked up, calm. I know. You're acting like it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Probably the biggest thing that's ever happened to me, he said. But I'm not panicking because that won't help either of us. I'm here. You and those babies, he swallowed. You're mine now. I'll do whatever it takes. She looked away, suddenly overwhelmed. It's not that simple, Landon. Why not? Because I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for you. My whole life was structured, safe, I was careful. And then one night that changed everything, he finished gently. She nodded, her voice tight. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess this up? What if I push you away like I do everyone else? You won't, he said, reaching for her hand. And if you try, I'll just find another way back in. Isla, I've already lost you once. I'm not making that mistake again. Her eyes brimmed. You make it sound so easy. It's not, but it's real. He stood then, came around the island, and helped her down from her stool. His arms circled her waist, resting over the curve of her belly. I'm not asking for perfection, he murmured. I'm asking for a chance, to show you that I mean this. She looked up at him. This scares me. I know, he said. It scares me too. And then he kissed her. Not like the first time when it had been about tension and memory and urgency. This kiss was slow, intentional, like he was kissing away every fear, every wall. She kissed him back, deeply, desperately, until tears threatened again. And this time she didn't pull away. Because in his arms, even the chaos felt like home. Over the next few days, their dynamic shifted. Landon insisted on accompanying her to her next scan, despite her hesitance. He had already called his lawyer to start updating his will. He started sketching out a baby room in his penthouse, even if Isla hadn't said anything about moving in together. She was still processing. But Landon? He had already decided. This was his family now. One evening, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a plush throw, a tray of tea and fruit beside them. The city sparkled below, Lagos glittering like a diamond necklace laid across the coast. I haven't told my team, Isla said quietly, about the pregnancy. You don't have to rush. I run an image-based brand, she added. People expect me to look perfect, be perfect, stay unattached. I'm afraid of what they'll say, what they'll think. He turned to her, brushing her curls behind her ear. You're not just a brand, Isla. You're a woman, a powerful, brilliant one. And if your world can't handle you being a mother, it doesn't deserve you. She rested her head on his shoulder. Why do you believe in me so easily? Because I've seen you fight for everything, he whispered. And now it's my turn to fight for you. They sat like that for a long time. No titles, no plans, no pressure. Just two people suspended in something too big for words. But peace doesn't last forever. The next morning, a phone call shattered the quiet. Isla answered groggily, expecting it to be her aunt or her office manager, but the voice that greeted her was cold, smug. Miss Monroe, I assume you've seen the blogs. She froze. Who is this? The name isn't important, but I thought you should know. Someone's leaked your ultrasound picture, and Landon's name is trending alongside the phrase triplet scandal. The call ended. Isla sat up in bed, panic squeezing her ribs. She opened Twitter, Instagram, every gossip page in Lagos. And there it was. Billionaire Landon Steele, expecting triplets with secret lover. Sources confirm she's fashion mogul Isla Monroe. A wave of nausea hit her. Not from pregnancy, but from fear. Her world was no longer private. The secret was out. The sound of Isla's phone buzzing on her marble nightstand was relentless. Every time she tried to close her eyes and breathe, it vibrated again. Another call, another notification, another headline she didn't want to read. By 8 a.m., it was no longer just gossip blogs. Business media outlets had picked up the story too. Steele Group caught in private scandal. Triplets on the way with fashion executive Isla Monroe. Monroe Lux's queen pregnant with billionaire heir's children. Is it love or leverage? Boardrooms, babies, and billionaires. The hidden romance that shook Banana Island. Isla gripped the sink in her bathroom, staring at her reflection like it belonged to someone else. This wasn't how she wanted the world to know. This wasn't how she wanted her babies to enter the spotlight. And the worst part? She had no idea who leaked it. Landon arrived at her house 30 minutes later, visibly furious. He was dressed in black jeans and a storm gray shirt, no jacket, just raw energy and clenched fists. "I'm handling it," he said the moment she opened the door. "Handling what exactly?" Isla replied sharply. "My personal life trending on Nigerian Twitter? Random journalists emailing my staff for comments? I've already called my legal team. They're tracing the leak, and we're sending cease and desist letters by noon." Isla stepped back, folding her arms. "Why does it feel like this is more about protecting your image than mine?" Landon blinked. "What?" "I didn't ask for this, Landon. I didn't ask to be thrust into the middle of a scandal." "Neither did I," he said, voice tight. "Oh, please," Isla snapped. "You've been Lagos' most eligible bachelor for a decade. This will only make you more interesting." "Me? I run a fashion consultancy built on control and exclusivity. I've already gotten 2 messages from investors wondering if I'm stepping away." Landon's brows furrowed. "I didn't leak this, Isla. I didn't say you did. But you're acting like this is my fault." She turned away, unable to look at him. "It's not your fault, but it's still my mess." He followed her into the living room. "Our mess, Isla. Ours. You don't get to shut me out now." Her voice trembled. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be vulnerable in public. Be someone's family. I was finally in control of my life. Now I feel like I'm spiraling, and you're just fine." He moved closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm not fine. I'm trying to be calm because I know one of us has to be." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "It's easier for you." "No, it's not," he said firmly. "You think this doesn't terrify me too? I've never had a family that didn't fall apart. My dad died before I could understand what love even meant. Every woman I've been with walked away before it got real. But you're the only thing that's ever felt solid." Silence settled between them, thick and trembling. "I'm scared," Isla whispered. "So am I," he replied, "but running from this won't make it go away." She pulled back, suddenly cold. "Maybe some space is a good idea." Landon's expression fell. "Are you asking me to leave?" "Just for a few days. I need time." "To do what?" "To think, to breathe, to figure out if I can still lead my company while being plastered across blogs with your name attached to mine." He nodded slowly, jaw tight. "Fine." He walked toward the door, then paused. "But don't confuse space with distance. I'm not going anywhere, Isla. Not from you, not from our children." Then he left. And Isla collapsed onto the couch, her hands on her belly, the weight of 3 lives pressing harder than ever. The following days were a whirlwind of media cleanup and self-imposed isolation. Isla turned off her phone and worked from home. She issued a vague press release about taking personal time and declined all interviews. Her staff was understanding. Her investors were careful, but inside she was unraveling. Pregnant, alone, unsure if she could trust the man who swore he'd never leave. And yet, she missed him. His calm, his presence, his ridiculous midnight food cravings, and the way he kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that ever made sense. Maybe distance wasn't the answer. 3 nights later, Isla found herself pacing in the hallway after a long shower, hair wet, robe tied loosely at her waist. Her hand rested on her slightly rounding belly as she whispered softly. "I'm sorry," she murmured to the babies. "I'm trying to protect you the only way I know how." Then came the knock. She paused. Another knock, louder, more insistent. When she opened the door, Landon stood there, rain-drenched, holding a plastic file folder. "Just, you left me no choice," he said. "You locked me out, and I respected it. But I also know you. You're probably overthinking yourself into a corner." She sighed. "Landon." He opened the file. Inside were plans, medical care schedules, a drafted media strategy, a proposed team of private security, and a hand-drawn sketch of a baby room. "I'm not trying to push you," he said, "but I need you to know I'm planning to stay." Her eyes flicked to the sketch. 3 cribs, one for each life they made in a single night. "I didn't leak it," he said softly, but I'd leak the truth if I thought it would make you feel safe. Isla reached for the sketch, holding it like it might fall apart. Then without thinking, she pulled him into a kiss. This one wasn't passionate. It wasn't desperate. It was grateful and scared and real. That night she let him hold her again. No promises, no perfect plans. Just two people in the middle of a storm, choosing again and again to stay. The morning after Landon returned, Isla woke up to something she hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not the kind that came from silence, but the kind that came from knowing someone had chosen to stay. She rolled over to find him already awake, lying on his side, head propped on one hand, watching her with soft eyes. I didn't want to wake you, he said. You needed the sleep. She blinked slowly. I needed you more. He smiled and brushed her curls off her cheek. Then I'm not going anywhere. For the first time since she'd seen that ultrasound screen, her heart didn't clench with anxiety. It swelled. Later that day, Isla stood in her office, back in full command mode. She wore a sleek black gown with a cinched waist and soft heels, the kind that looked effortless but could cut through any room like a knife. Her assistant buzzed in. Ma'am, your 3 o'clock board call is ready. Isla took a deep breath. She had kept the pregnancy quiet within her company, but now that the media had done the worst of the damage, she owed it to her team to speak her truth, with or without the narrative being controlled. She joined the virtual meeting and was greeted by a dozen faces on the screen. Before we begin, she said, I want to address the headlines. The tension was immediate. She continued, yes, I am pregnant. Yes, with triplets. No, I am not stepping down. Someone chuckled nervously. Another board member blinked in surprise. I am very much capable of running Monroe Lux while building a family, she added. And if anyone feels otherwise, this is the time to say it. No one said a word. After a moment, the board chair, Mrs. Rena Adebayo, smiled. We didn't invest in Monroe Lux because you were single, Isla. We invested because you're brilliant. We're with you. Isla felt a lump rise in her throat. Thank you, she said quietly. That evening, Landon surprised her again, this time with something small but thoughtful. He took her to a cozy rooftop restaurant in Ikoyi, away from cameras and crowds, where the air was warm and private. The table was set with soft lighting, and the city glowed in the distance. She wore a flowing emerald dress that danced around her ankles. Her bump had just begun to show, and for once she wasn't trying to hide it. As they sat down, she looked across the table and smiled. You keep showing up. Landon leaned in. Because you finally let me. She exhaled deeply. I spent years thinking I had to do it all myself, that no one would stay, that I had to protect myself from this. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm not just here because of the babies, he said. I need you to believe that. She nodded. I do. Now. I just didn't know how to let go before. Do you remember what you used to say when we were kids? He asked. She laughed. I said a lot of things, most of them stubborn. You'd say, I'd rather die than be rescued, even when we were 12. She smiled. Yeah, sounds like me. Well, he said softly, this time you don't need to be rescued. You just need to be loved. The words hit her like warmth in winter. Isla blinked quickly, fighting tears. And you're sure you're not going anywhere? Landon nodded. I've loved you since I was 15. I just didn't know it back then. After dinner, they walked slowly under the city lights, her fingers intertwined with his. He moved slower than usual, careful not to rush her, always attuned to her every step, every shift. Have you thought of names yet? He asked. She laughed. I barely wrapped my head around the fact that there are 3 of them. Well, he said, I've been brainstorming. Oh, really? Of course. How else am I going to beat you to it? They spent the next hour arguing playfully over names. Some ridiculous, some beautiful. They talked about schools and childhood memories and what kind of parents they wanted to be. It wasn't a grand plan, but it was theirs. Later that night, Isla sat at her vanity, brushing her hair when Landon appeared in the doorway, holding a velvet box. Her heart stopped. "What's that?" "Don't panic," he said quickly. "It's not what you think." She raised an eyebrow. "It better not be." He walked over and opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with 3 tiny heart charms, each etched with the letter B, for the baby's temporary nicknames: Bean 1, Bean 2, Bean 3. She laughed, then cried, then hugged him like the world was ending. "You're unbelievable," she whispered against his chest. "I just want you to remember," he said, resting his chin on her head, "that even on the hardest days, you're never alone." That night, Isla lay awake in bed, her hand resting over her belly. Landon was asleep beside her, one arm protectively draped across her waist. She stared at the ceiling, the soft whir of the ceiling fan above. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what was coming. Because love had returned. Because she had finally believed. The next morning, the air over Banana Island was unusually quiet. Rain had passed through Lagos in the early hours, leaving everything clean and glistening. Isla Monroe sat on the terrace, barefoot, wrapped in a knit shawl. A tray of fruit, croissants, and ginger tea sat untouched in front of her. She was staring out at the horizon, hand resting on her small, growing bump. Landon had left early, said he had a few things to handle. No details. Just a kiss on her temple and a whispered, "Trust me." And now, her chest ached with anticipation. She had never felt more loved. But she had also never felt more vulnerable. Because when you finally believe, you have something to lose. Hours later, her Aunt Marion showed up uninvited, carrying a box of baby clothes she accidentally found during her morning errands. "You knew?" Isla asked, arms crossed, trying to hold back a smile. Marion just winked. "About what?" "Whatever Landon is planning." "I know he told you." "I have no idea what you mean," she said, clearly lying. "But if I were you, I'd put on something gorgeous. Something white." "White? Or blush? He said you glow in blush." Isla groaned. "You're both impossible. And you're loved. Now get dressed." That evening, Isla was driven, blindfolded, to an unknown location. She protested the entire way. "Is this necessary?" "Yes," her aunt said from the front seat. "No peeking." She felt the car slow, then stop. The door opened, and a strong hand reached for hers. She knew it was him. The second his fingers touched hers, her pulse settled. "You okay?" Landon asked softly. "I haven't been this nervous since my first investor pitch," she admitted. He chuckled. "Well, tonight is about returns." She pulled off the blindfold and gasped. They were standing inside the lobby of Azure Heights, one of Lagos's most luxurious high-rises. The penthouse suite had been transformed into a world of warm lights, candles, and soft jazz humming through hidden speakers. The entire space had been remodeled into a private dreamscape, and at the center of it all, near the glass windows overlooking the sea, stood a white baby grand piano. "Landon," she whispered. He walked her forward, still holding her hand. "This," he said, "is our new home." She stopped. "What?" "I bought it 2 months ago. I've been renovating it in secret. I wanted to give you a space that wasn't yours alone, or mine alone, but ours." Her eyes filled instantly. "It's soundproofed, protected, private. You'll never have to worry about press or noise, or feeling unsafe." "Landon, I don't need a palace." He smiled. "I know, but you deserve one anyway." Then he stepped back and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Isla's breath hitched. "No pressure," he said quickly, almost nervous for the first time in weeks. "I'm not doing this because we're having children. I'm not doing it to fix something. I'm doing it because I want to wake up beside you for the rest of my life. And because I've been in love with you since we were kids, and you dared me to eat 6 scoops of ice cream at once." She laughed through the tears. He knelt. Isla Monroe, will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes, he said breathlessly. 1,000 times, yes. The next hour blurred into laughter, kisses, and phone calls to friends and family. Marion cried so hard she had to sit down with a glass of wine. Landon kissed her hand at least a dozen times. They danced barefoot on the marble floor while the sun set across the ocean, the lights of Lagos beginning to twinkle below. And when he wrapped his arms around her belly during their slow dance, she whispered, "They're kicking." He smiled. "They're saying yes, too." In the weeks that followed, their lives transformed. Landon's penthouse became a home, cribs installed, soft lighting designed for late-night feedings, a reading nook built just for Isla. They met with a pediatrician, hired a private maternity chef, and began nesting in the most luxurious way possible. But amidst the luxury, what truly mattered was the quiet joy. The way Landon spoke to the babies at night through her belly. The way Isla, without realizing it, began to call his place ours. One night, curled up in bed, she whispered, "I used to think love meant giving up control." "And now?" he asked. "Now I know it just means sharing it." The wedding was private. A garden ceremony behind their home, overlooking the water. White florals, golden accents, and soft jazz. No press, just family and a few close friends. She wore a satin gown that floated like clouds, and he wore an ivory tuxedo with no tie, just ease. They exchanged vows barefoot under the stars, standing on petals. Landon whispered, "We've already done forever once. Let's do it again, but better." And Isla said, "This time I believe in us." 6 months later, the white villa in Banana Island stood tall, wrapped in soft ivy, its high glass windows catching the Lagos sunlight and scattering it like diamonds across the marble porch. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a home, one built for friendship, forged in love, and softened by the coups of 3 brand new lives. Inside, laughter echoed through the hallway. Landon Steele sat at the breakfast island, wearing a loose cotton t-shirt and soft gray sweatpants, scrolling through an email on his tablet. On the counter in front of him was a half-empty mug that read, "Grumpy but taken." From the living room came a familiar sound, soft baby cries, followed by the soothing hum of jazz from the Bluetooth speakers and a whispered lullaby in Isla's voice. "Babe," Landon called out, pretending to sound annoyed, "your daughter is crying. I think she's demanding a full audience." "I'm coming, Your Highness," Isla replied from the nursery, her voice warm and teasing. Moments later she appeared, barefoot, glowing, her curls piled into a messy bun, dressed in a robe with one tiny sock stuck to her shoulder and a pacifier in her hand. "Which one this time?" she asked, arching a brow. "The loud one." "That narrows it down to 2, she smirked, handing him the pacifier. Landon chuckled, stood, and walked over to the large white bassinet in the living room, where 3 tiny babies lay wrapped in pastel swaddles like royalty on parade. "Morning, my girls," he said, lifting the loudest of the trio, Zara, into his arms. She instantly calmed, staring up at him with sleepy eyes and an almost smug expression. "She's already got your sass," he murmured. "She's got your stubbornness," Isla countered, walking up behind him and slipping her arms around his waist. "And your dimples." Their other 2 daughters, Zoe and Zia, remained asleep, at least for the moment. "I still can't believe there are 3, he whispered. "I still can't believe we made them," Isla replied. They stood there quietly for a moment, soaking in the peaceful chaos of their new life. It hadn't all been easy. There were sleepless nights, teary days, and more diaper explosions than either of them cared to count. There were hormonal shifts, moments of fear, and even a brief hospital scare when one of the babies had jaundice. But through it all, they held on. To each other. To the love that had once been buried beneath years of silence and was now louder than ever. Later that afternoon, Aunt Marion arrived, dressed in a floral boo-boo, oversized sunglasses, and dragging a gift bag the size of a suitcase. "I come bearing grand aunt duties," she announced. Where are my babies? They're napping, Isla said, laughing. Shame. I wore perfume just for them. Marion spotted the wedding photo sitting on the console table, framed in soft gold lace. Isla in a silk gown, Landon beside her, both barefoot and beaming. The triplets had been in matching flower crowns, nestled safely in Aunt Marion's arms during the ceremony. Still looks like a dream, she said, brushing a speck of dust from the frame. It was, Isla whispered. It still is. That evening, Landon took Isla to the rooftop garden he'd secretly finished building weeks ago. The vines were blooming with white hibiscus and fairy lights wrapped gently around the trellises. There, a single table sat beneath the stars, and beside it, the baby monitor, volume turned up just enough for peace of mind. He pulled out her chair. She arched a brow. Another surprise? I wanted one last vow, he said. They sat, fingers laced between them, as the breeze whispered around them. You first, she said. He cleared his throat dramatically. I vow to never eat the last plantain chip without asking. She laughed. Liar. I vow, he continued, to love you even when you steal all the blankets. I don't. Okay, I do, she grinned. I vow to remind you every day that you're not just the mother of my children, but the woman who rebuilt my heart. Her smile faltered slightly, overwhelmed. That's not fair. Your turn. She took a breath, blinking away tears. I vow to always keep choosing us, even when I'm tired, even when I'm scared. Landon's eyes softened. I vow to raise these girls with the same love we were raised in, the kind that's patient and kind and full of second chances. He reached over, cupping her cheek. And I vow, she added, her voice breaking, to never let another 17 years go by without kissing you good morning. They leaned into each other, their lips meeting in a kiss that wasn't fiery or rushed, but deep, anchoring, infinite. The kind of kiss people spend lifetimes chasing. Below, the soft cries of their daughters echoed through the monitor. Isla stood, smiled. Back to work. Landon grinned, following her inside. Back to forever. Because sometimes love doesn't come with fireworks and fairy tales. Sometimes it comes back 17 years later, holding a baby bottle, 3 bassinets, and a vow you never stop believing in. And this time, they chose it together.